And welcome William Price in Austin, Texas. Hi, William.
Hi, Bill. Thank you.
It's good to see you. I was just telling William that we're talking about how hot it is in Austin right now, in Texas, in the Dallas area. I was in Dallas for a few minutes last week. Oh my God! I came out of the plane. It felt like somebody had turned the oven on, and I was in it. It was so hot. Well, you get used to it, though. I used to live in Texas, and also I lived in Las Vegas, where sometimes it reads, 120 degrees out there.
That's
So,
for sure.
yeah, it can be super hot. I remember as a kid, I grew up in Vegas, and I used to ride my bicycle on the tar streets that they would, or the cement streets that they would repair with tar. And it would get so hot that it would make the tar that repaired the street get little bubbles in it. And I would drive my bicycle down those bubbles and hear them pop, 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 pop. It was funny. Anyway, it gets hot. But where we are right now, I'm just happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for being here. And we're looking at the Discourses again, 251 to 260 today. And yeah, I'm going to announce we have a 3-day virtual retreat coming up this weekend with several that are here in this book study. And I'll tell you more about it when we close, and you can check it out. But let's get into Atmananda, Krishna Menon. William, where do you want to start on this?
251, but let me get my cheater glasses. I had my long range. Just 1 second.
All righty. Well, you go ahead and do that. I will get started with
Okay, super.
251. The reading of the title is, What Does a Guru Do for a Disciple? And that's a pretty important question. I mean, if you're in Europe likes gurus, not all of Europe, but a lot of Europeans that I met when I was at Muji's ashram, they're looking for their guru. I've had conversations with them, the Brits and guys from Europe, Spain, Finland, Denmark, a lot of them talking about, the Ukraine, all of that would talk about looking for the guru when they found Muji. And I love Muji and I love his teaching. I just couldn't connect with the guru wanting to have a guru for me. But let's see what Atmananda says about it.
Yeah, it's pretty common, and in a way, it's a positive aspiration to want to know truth and think that the mind thinks I need someone else, right, to show me this. And sometimes it does.
Yeah.
And the aspiration is good, but it doesn't really go to the depth of whatever he's going to tell me is already, my consciousness already, and that is unitary and not a division. But we look for devotion from others, thinking that they will take us by the hand, which is fine, and that happens naturally, though.
The only thing I like the question. If I had someone like Atmananda, I definitely would have a guru like him. Or Papaji or Ramana. Even when I went to the ashrams in Bangalore and and Tiruvannamalai. I think people get over devotional to the guru as a person, and I think that's kind of a misstep. I don't really think it's necessary to idolize the guru.
Yeah, it can become a blockage actually because it's dualistic in nature.
Yeah,
Seeing the guru as other than oneself. And that's the problem with bhakti, like Hare Krishnas and stuff like that, is they never realize that until grace happens that they are that. Or as Nisargadatta said, I am that, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, Atmananda, he speaks a little bit. He doesn't speak like someone who is looking for attention. He really speaks
Johnson.
like you would want a guru. And Jenny just posted, a guru is a teacher. And, we love teachers. We love Francis. We love Rupert. We love other teachers. I was just interviewing over the weekend. I interviewed Omoda Ma in Santa Fe. I interviewed Angelo DeLulo in Denver. And the people are having awakening experiences through the teaching. And even like Jenny Beal, she's a great teacher.
Yeah,
And she points to the truth, and people can and do have awakening experiences through the transmission of the teacher.
absolutely.
Yeah. But Jenny, I don't want to, I mean, we're not going to start calling you the guru. I know you get a laugh out of that. Maybe Richard will call you the guru. Hey, how's the guru doing today? Funny. Okay. It says in this answer, what does a guru do for a disciple? And Atmananda says, it is something which a disciple need never bother. I like that he used herself about, and which the intellect can never grasp. You need only know that a guru takes you from the phenomenal to the absolute. So it takes you from the personhood, the time and space, to the infinite presence.
Yeah, I like that too. I highlighted your question is purely from the mind's level, so give it up. Ultimately, you will come to the position that the question was not necessary at all.
Yeah, when I hear that, you don't want to tell someone be quiet. You're just telling them where the question is coming from. You're not really saying, "Hey, don't waste your time," or you're not
No, it
telling.
isn't something that you tell another person. It's something that awareness tells your mind.
Okay, yeah, yeah, you're right. And it's not understandable. He says it's not understandable to the mind. That makes sense. I mean, infinite presence isn't understandable to the mind. It wants to go along. It thinks it's waking up. It never is. This is never going to wake up. Yeah. So let's see. There's some couple of comments in the chat. Let's just take a look at that.
Yeah, Rick's got some good ones there.
There are many that can teach, but few are authentic teachers. Jenny is certainly one of them. Yes, she certainly is. And Angelo DeLulo is brilliant. I was at his house on Sunday. He's a stitch. He gave me a T-shirt. Yeah,
Cool.
he's a T-shirt guy. Let's see. There are And then Rick, be interested and notice how conditioning arises, the function. This openness will expose and start to dismantle. Does that say eons of conditioning? Yeah, judgment, eons of judgment and projection, etc. As a result, every facet of life starts to become your greatest teaching. This is not a doing. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Rick. And it's true. The inner guru takes over. And just what you just said, William, it's awareness. Awareness is that that silent, intuitive. It's silent, and yet sometimes it has a voice, yours.
Yeah, all of us. It could come from the garbage man or the clerk at the grocery store.
Exactly. Yeah. Or right here on this book study, you might hear something.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Right. Okay.
Should we go down to 252?
Yeah, let's start there.
It's funny. Can I tell a really short vignette?
Let's use the title first. Senses
Okay,
compared.
senses compared to colored spectacles. Rupert used this a lot with his orange glasses up on the mountain in the snow, right?
Oh, yeah,
And the
yeah.
snow looks orange. And anyway, it's like I've had this experience a couple times that I like to look at the stars at night, and I go out and I look at them, and then a couple times I shut my eyes and the stars are still there. It's like, so I wonder, is consciousness seeing the stars, or does it really need the eyes? You know, it's kind of a funny thing. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, are these eyes really what sees, or is consciousness what really sees?
Well, it can't be anything but consciousness. Hello.
Hello, everything is.
Right. And yet the question that's coming from the mind wants to know if consciousness has eyes and cognizes stars. I don't think so. Not the absolute. The absolute just is, and everything is that is. And yet it somehow reduces itself so that William can have a question in the mind, and actually what's seeing the eyes is also consciousness. I mean, what's seeing the stars is also consciousness. Yeah, but I do like the question, and I've had it myself.
Yeah, it's fun.
And here's Rick again. Oh, wait a minute. Is this Rick? Yeah, this is Rick. There is no individual who senses anything. That which senses is not separate. Senses are very useful, but impersonal in nature. That is, until they are hijacked by thought and used to reinforce some type of story or identification. Yeah. Yeah. The mind loves to hijack the experience and say, oh, it's me. Don't you know it's me looking at the stars? And that's the distinction. That me is the localized imposter awareness.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so he says, so the only thing needed is for you to remove the colored spectacles of your senses and mind. And that would be just being, just awareness with no commentary. And then you will see the reality in its nakedness and full glory. And in the nakedness, it doesn't have a label. It doesn't have, and yet it experience is still known, as we'll see further, that consciousness so almost like shifts into feeling. Consciousness has a felt experience. We'll see in a couple of discourses.
Great.
Here
It certainly does from my experience. Francis talks often about, understanding, and there's a definite feeling to understanding.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And Rick says, I want to say that pure awareness, simply awareness, seemingly indifferent to any preferred outcome. Well, yeah, it doesn't have preferences. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. Everything is exactly as it is. It's the preferences of the seeming separate self that creates the resistance and the suffering.
But also it brings the joy, because it's like, you don't have to listen to, like, say you like jazz instead of hip hop. There's nothing wrong with listening to jazz instead of hip hop. People have their preferences. Some people like, one thing, some people like another, apples and oranges, whatever floats your boat there. Neither one's really harmful.
This is the subtle thing, William. Who has the preference? Consciousness is the spark of what we think are preferences, is just the movement of consciousness in individuated 8 billion ways.
Right.
We think we make decisions. We don't. We think, oh yeah, I want a blue. I really like blue. No, it's not you. It's consciousness that's reflecting itself through you is moved to blue, and then you take credit for it.
Yeah, it is ludicrous.
Yeah. So the headset, yes. And Amy said, maybe not indifferent, Rick, but loves every outcome.
Yeah.
And then Jenny said, Atmananda is pointing to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, consciousness without objects. That's why he says, remove mind and senses. Thank you, Jenny, for keeping us focused on track with what he's really pointing to. And then Amy said the headset. Yeah, the headset is the filter that the body mind uses.
And to Jenny's point, that's going to come up later in this list of aphorisms.
Yeah.
A little later.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny.
253, reason and heart, their relationship. This is an interesting discourse.
Yes. And it kind of touches on I mean, there is very accurate people like Francis, and then there are complete ecstatic or crazy wisdom people, and it's like not one is necessarily better than the other, but there is a path of ecstatic illumination that the Sufis and others practice that does bring you to the same point as the more analytical approach that, say, Francis is a master of. But yeah, they both get you to the same spot eventually. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Raja or Jnana is necessarily better than Bhakti, because Bhakti will actually bring you to the same position of the object of your devotion.
Yeah.
And they become inseparable.
Reason and heart, he says, they are not watertight compartments at all. Both of them radiate from the common center, the I principle, and you can reach that I principle through either. If you reach it through the heart, you will find the reason also present there, and vice versa. Reason includes the heart element also. The Shastras bear testimony to this. Reason or vidya is represented in the Shastras as the spouse, or I think that would mean companion too, the spouse of the absolute.
Yeah.
Yeah, this feminine aspect attributed to the personification of reason amply proves the prominence of the heart element present in it.
Yeah. In the Indian tradition, that's very prevalent because the Saraswati, or the knowledge of she's the consort of Brahma. But the thing is, to see Brahma Saraswati as one, not as separate beings, but as one consciousness manifested in two different ways. Just like Shiva and Shakti are really one being.
Yeah.
And that's shown in the iconography and everything, that they're a team that is really one, just looks like two.
Right. Has two different flavors.
Yeah. But in Tantra, the Tantric really knows that they are one. Yeah.
So looking at 254, why the traditional injunction of secrecy in talking about the truth? I think this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially, if you have family members and you're involved in this. This is why Jesus told that some kid that he healed if the story is true, go and tell no one. The reason, go and tell no one, don't disturb this direct experience.
Yeah. He also used it in his in the story about don't throw your pearls before swine.
Yes. Right.
It's just, it's not time, right? It's not the right place. It's not the right situation.
And if it leads you to argue a point, you went down the rabbit hole, man. Yeah. It says spiritual sadhakas are strictly enjoined by the Shastras not to speak the naked truth to purely worldly minded persons. Truth suffers thereby. Such listeners interpret it only in the customary objective relativity in which alone they live. They find it impossible to reconcile the truth this way, so they begin to ridicule truth itself. This naturally drives them to perdition. You must try to avoid such a catastrophe at all cost. I've had this conversation with one of my kids, and my brothers. If I go in that direction with too far, it creates this like this opposing thing, and it's just best to not start it.
Words of wisdom, Bill. I totally agree.
Yeah. Rick says, keep it secret and keep it safe. Yes, the truth can't be taught, and it will certainly lose itself. I think that's what it says. Does that say itself? Authentically, and become diluted if ever institutionalized. Yeah, and the thing is, and this is what I love about this path also, I came from the born again path where we used to try to get people saved to accept Jesus. Oh my God, that was so much trouble and so hard. You're trying to, proselytize people, get them to, convince them to see it your way. You don't need to do that with the truth. It just when the student is ready, the teacher appears. When you're ripe, it shows up for you. It falls on your head in a bookstore. Somebody mentions it in passing and says, "Hey, check this out," and your heart says, "Oh, I'm curious about that." It's all
Yeah.
organic.
There's a saying, a Sufi teacher told me, this way cannot be taught. It can taught. It can only be caught.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So now the questioner on 255 says, why do I feel that I do not know my real nature? He says, the answer is the I principle does not ever feel and does not make a complaint either. It is always the mind that feels. The mind is incapable of knowing my real nature. Even when the mind turns its attention to my real nature, the mind loses its own form and gets merged in consciousness, my real nature. So it's kind of a paradox because he almost says that doesn't happen. Then he brings it back and says, and here's the way it happens. Before you can say you feel, you must necessarily perceive that feeling. That perceiver then must certainly be beyond that feeling function. You are the I principle. So that's, truth, presence, peace, love, beauty, kindness, authenticity, all of these things, they do have a feeling point to them, but it's because you're resting in the space of presence, and it somehow imbues itself, so it's a felt experience.
And it's beautiful. It usually manifests as love.
Right. It's not a romantic love, although it could be. It's not coming from romantic love, although it inspires romantic love, I think.
Yeah, I meant it in the sense, in the agape sense.
Yes, of course you did. Yeah. Rick said, Andrew said something to Amy. When our friends and family find that we don't practice what we teach, they refuse to hear what you teach. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, best just to leave it alone. Just to, don't be self-righteous. That's the self-righteous character coming out. And we all make mistakes. It's when we are just, matter of fact, yeah, I screwed that up. Then it just rolls like water off the duck's back. No big deal. Rick said, identification with the body mind is the primary misunderstanding. Noticing the absence of Rick the individual is an ongoing affair. There is no finish line. The lesser the individual identification, the clearer the view. Yes, somehow this former identification is replaced by a kind of trust or faith in what is. That's the magic. I love the magic of intuitive, or just, the flow of being. Looks like we lost your video, William Price.
Oh,
Did
thanks.
you turn it off? Oh, there you are. Okay. All righty. And let's see, the last little italicized says, love becomes divine when personality is not emphasized. Upanishad.
Same
Yeah.
as the agape principle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we can move to 256 if you like.
Sure. That's well, it's not strange. It's kind of an unusual question, but
How to give up wrong identification during eating?
I don't know what the questioner is really worried about, but
Yeah.
I guess he's been taught that, this dirty body, and there's a lot of Indian teachings where the body's despicable, and, and all this stuff, but the body's made of food, the food is the body, body's the food, it wouldn't be there without it, right?
Right.
And, the goddesses in India is worshipped as, the giver of food. And it's very important in a poor country to be blessed with the gift of food. From a cultural standpoint, in poorer countries, it's natural that they see the divine in the form of food. And but this isn't to preclude, anything else. But certainly a man who's hungry has a difficult time, thinking or preparing, doing yoga when he's worried about his next meal,
Okay. Yeah.
Now, some sadhus overcome that and become ascetics and starve themselves, to get spiritual powers. That's their problem, right? But that's certainly not Atmananda's path, because he's preaching to the layman, the regular householder. But sometimes people do get confused, and apparently that's the case with this individual.
In the answer, he says, though you think you're eating when the body is eating, still you also know or perceive the eating. So he's inviting it, just like you, and just to perceive it, to see it, just like you would see thoughts, feelings, emotions. He says that identification is usually made only after the function. During the function, you stand as the function. So after the eating, stand as the knower of the eating, and then you're saved, or you're aligned. And this you could say this with anything else as well.
Yes.
If you're in the middle of any activity, good or bad, right or wrong, whatever it is, you can actually be the perceiver simultaneous with the action.
Exactly. Well. It's a totally Zen thing, right? It's like you're building a table, but you're not building a table, the body's building a table, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're watching the movie of the table being built.
Or
Exactly.
washing the dishes, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Same
it just
thing.
happens and it becomes an enjoyable experience, but you're not really doing it. The body's just going through the motions and getting jobs done. You know,
That's what
wood
makes it
carry
so.
water, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what makes it so fun. And it can be making love, working on your car, walking, uh, playing with your kids or your animals. It doesn't matter. You're, and that's the awakening experience. That's the beauty of uh, of knowing, of knowing, of being.
Yeah, it's a flow thing, right?
Yeah, it's the flow thing. Yeah, living in the flow. That's row your boat. Yeah, that's why we learn those songs as kids. So we could be in our 70s or less and go, oh, that's what that meant. How 257 says, how does remembrance prove me? How does remembrance prove me? And then Atmananda says, remembrance of any past incident consists of in recollecting all that is connected with it, including also your own body and personality as part of the incident. You cannot remember anything but your actual perceptions. So you must have definitely perceived your personality also during the incident. This perceiver could be nothing other than your impersonal self. So every act of remembrance proves you alone, the perceiver, awareness alone.
Uh,
That's so clear. That's just right. You know, he just puts the dot on the I. It was mind that was in activity, and again, it is the mind that remembers later. The mind silently gets information from the witness, which alone was present during the incident. It's always awareness. Going deeper, you will find the memory itself is a misnomer because the mind can never bear witness to the mind itself. Here follows an incident, not a story, of a lunatic cured by the witness thought.
yeah, this is great.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. That was so potent.
I'll read it, Bill. Uh,
Good.
this is going to be a narrative, so bear with me, people.
Okay.
I'll just go through it because it's so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to set my phone down and read.
Okay.
Once,
We'll look at your ceiling fan.
yeah,
Good.
it's kind
All
of
right.
peaceful.
Go ahead, William.
Okay. Once in August 1950, when Atmananda stayed in Bombay for a couple of days on his way to Europe from Europe, he gave audience to a good number of spiritual enthusiasts who flocked for short interviews with him. Among them was an educated young Farsi gentleman who was a lunatic for the past 20 years, but he had occasional sober moments for an hour or two every day. Fortunately, it was during one of those sober moments that he came for the interview. As soon as he was let in and seated, Shri Atmananda asked him, well, what is it that you want? Well, sir, I'm not come for any spiritual instruction. They say I'm a lunatic, and I too believe it, more or less. Atmananda replied, sorry, I'm not a doctor myself. You must go to some doctor and take advice. Visitor replied, no, sir, I tried all that in vain. I heard that you're a great divine, and I'm sure you can help me out of this malady. Atmananda replied, no, you are mistaken. I am not a saint, and I have no powers to help you in this. Please go and seek remedy elsewhere. Visitor, no, sir, I'm desperate. I shall not return without getting something from you. Atmananda was in a fix. The gentleman's face did not show any signs of disorder, and he felt compassion for the man. So Shri Atmananda asked him rather abruptly, well, what's your ailment? They say I'm a lunatic. Is it true? Yes, it's true, more or less. How can you say so? Because I know it. I cannot think about anything consistently for some time. How do you know that? Well, I know that I can see my mind running from object to object in quick succession. Atmananda replied, but are you that changing mind, or are you that knowing principle which never changes? The visitor said, of course, I'm that knowing principle. Atmananda retorted with some force, be that knowing principle always, and don't worry about your mind. The gentleman opened his mouth wide and sat aghast for a minute and said with luminous satisfaction, yes, yes, I've got it. I want nothing more from you now. Allow me, sir, to go, and I shall write to you from home. Atmananda replied, yes, you may go and be at peace. He went home straight and wrote Shri Atmananda regularly after 3 days, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, last being in August of 53. All equally assuring that he was leading a steady, happy, contented, and prosperous domestic life with his dear wife and children, of course, with hearty endorsements from each of them regarding his normality. This was indeed a miracle of the ultimate witness. Shri Atmananda had only just helped him to direct his own attention to that talisman in himself, and he was saved. And it all goes back to the line at the beginning when the guy said, well, I know that I can see my mind running from object to object in quick succession. And so he said, I know that I can see my mind.
Yep.
He was already there.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. The Atmananda, it was a brilliant self-inquiry. And he woke up right there.
Yep.
That was his awakening.
It's just like when Eckhart Tolle's famous story about I can't live with myself anymore. And he's who's the self who can't live with?
Right. Yes. Yeah, that was great. That was awesome. Thanks for doing that, William. And Amy says also an interesting take on who the teacher is here. Both are, in a way. Yes, Atmananda wanted him to leave. I can't read that word. He didn't see that he had anything to offer, but the man knew. Yeah. Remain. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Atmananda wisely let the man answer his own question so that it actually meant, hey, I already knew this.
Yeah, he caused him to look. He gave the if he'd have answered it for him, the guy wouldn't have looked. Yeah. There was a question from Andrew. Hey, Andrew. Atmananda in 257, Atmananda talks about personality. Does anyone know why Atmananda was interested in personality and his own astrological personality? Nitya Tripta mentioned his astrological personality in the foreword somewhere. In 257?
I don't see it in
Yeah, it's
250.
on the second paragraph. You cannot remember anything but your actual perceptions. So you must have definitely perceived your personality also
Oh,
during the incident. This perceiver could be nothing other than your impersonal self. So he's just telling him that that's not your person, that's the perceiver, that's your impersonal self. And the question that you have is, does anyone know why Atmananda was interested in personality? He wasn't. He was just helping the questioner to notice and to know that that wasn't, that the perceiver is not the personality. It was the impersonal self perceiving. It says, so you must have definitely perceived your personality also during the incident. This perceiver could be nothing other than your impersonal self. So he just redirected him to what was the perceiver. He thought the perceiver was his personality. That's what I get. Are you getting anything different?
no, same.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just trying to help him to see that the perceiver is always the self. It's never the personality. And if it is, it would be the imposter awareness, the localized identity, where awareness identifies itself as a person. Rick says, I think it was of interest to his audience. Okay. Personally, I find it a huge distraction. It's always about the perceiver, that which perceives. Yeah, I agree with you, Rick. And then let's see, where are we now? Are we on 258? No, we did 258. We're on 259.
Um, yeah, how to prove there's no ignorance in deep sleep. Francis talked about this a couple days ago. Jenny, you might have been there. I was talking about the Turiya state. It's just like means fourth state. It's like you got waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and then there's the real state that's always there is called the fourth, or the Turiya in Sanskrit, and it's the self. It never sleeps. It's always awake. And it
That's
only sees itself.
that's not deep sleep though. That's deep sleep, isn't it?
No, it's always awake.
Turiya is always awake in deep sleep. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So he
still
says
aware that it's aware.
it's what?
It's aware that it's aware.
Right. Well, and actually, we're identifying, this is so subtle, but this conversation is identifying as a body, right?
Yeah.
So
But yeah, it doesn't. Turi is it's it's beyond the three states. It's still there. But Rick says, maybe we're mincing words. I don't know, but it's the self. It's the Atman.
yeah, yeah. I think that's what Jenny was saying a couple of weeks ago too, when we were talking about the different samadhis, that there's Nirvikalpa samadhi, but then there's Turiya samadhi. And here she says, consciousness is always awake. Turiya is not really a state.
Right.
It's called the fourth state, but it's simply the recognition that the states are for the mind, not consciousness. Yeah. So I think Turiya is like right there.
Yeah. I think they just used it at some point as they used the fourth, but would it really? I mean, it's probably unnecessary, but they wanted to make it logical to the yogis in the crowd that, there's consciousness awareness that's never sleeps.
Right. Well, there was so many of those samadhis that were being used. It looks like they kept trying to clean it up and make it and purify it, or to give a clearer understanding. They kept adding new names to the teaching. He says in this 259, after waking from deep sleep, we make two spontaneous assertions. I was at peace and I did not know anything. These two statements refer to the very same experience, one positively and the other negatively, and therefore they cannot be different. The second is, in fact, only a paraphrase of the first. The second statement means only that I did not know anything other than the positive experience of deep peace in deep sleep. So there was no causal body present there at all. There was no body of unconscious potentiality implying an unmanifest world. This proves not the existence of Anyana, unconsciousness, but its non-existence in deep sleep. And then he says another approach, that which precedes is said to be the cause, and that which succeeds the effect. Here, the time element is essential to make this distinction possible and to establish causality. But standards of time differ fundamentally in the waking state. and in the dream state and in deep sleep. Time does not exist at all. Where there is no conception of time, neither causality nor a causal body can exist. For this reason also, there is no ignorance in deep sleep, but only deep peace, undisturbed by any other experience. Understanding deep sleep correctly in this way, you find the I principle there in its real nature. This I principle shines incessantly through all states. So when you say you wake up from deep sleep, it is wrong. For your deep sleep as your real nature continues without a break. That is to say, you never come out of the I principle. Just what you were saying, William. All the worlds created by you in the waking and dream states are withdrawn into you in deep sleep. The world as such does not exist in deep sleep, but only as pure I principle. And when he's saying the word you, he's not talking to this. He's
Yeah,
talking to formless consciousness.
sometimes the word I find useful is one doesn't find the word one instead of you or I or the pronoun one useful, maybe
Yeah.
from a grammatically.
I like to say it's you and get people comfortable with that you being consciousness, with that you being without a body, that you being without labels or comparisons. So but I, I don't know how many times you read when it says you and you think that it's talking about the person. He's not talking
No.
about the person. Yeah. And there was a good, Lynn had a question here. I've heard Rupert say deep sleep is equal to nirvikalpa samadhi. Is that true? And Jenny answered it. It depends what's meant by equivalent. I would say no, there is no commonality of the absence of phenomenal experience. But in nirvikalpa samadhi, that is a noumenal experience. It is, in a sense, artificial. The natural equivalent is the gap between thoughts. Yeah. I think I've heard Rupert say that too. And it seems like deep sleep is when you say deep sleep, I mean there's no voice. there's no there's no label, there's no activity, there's only, in deep sleep there's still consciousness is, and when you come out of that, as soon as you put words on, oh, how'd you sleep? Well, the mind is putting a label on the experience, but when it goes to check in what happened, there's nothing there except peace or presence, or you can't put a name on what is what is what of the answer that comes, right? It can only be answered by what happened. I don't know, I feel good now.
Yeah, I don't. A couple people mentioned in the comments about asking about noumenal, and the thing is, noumenal gets confused it's a Greek word, and it's just an opposition to phenomenal. So noumenal is the subjective experience that's not phenomenal. It doesn't come from the senses.
Jenny, would you come on and speak to what you're saying here?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, yes. Nominal experience. Well, let's start with phenomenal experience. Phenomenal experience is all of the experience that we have of objects. So objects can be physical objects, they can be our thoughts, they can be our bodily sensations. So nominal experience is experience which is not experience of an object, but it's still experience. So the experience that is important in Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a noumenal experience, and it's really the experience I am. It's that very pure experience I am, but it's the mind isn't present for that experience. It feels like you're still awake, but it also feels like you're asleep because the mind essentially is asleep. Now, in deep sleep, you're not having any kind of nominal experience because there's no knowing going on. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the knowing that arises, the first knowing that arises from it when people first go there, is the knowing that consciousness can exist in its own right without mind. Consciousness does not depend on mind. And that's such an important understanding. And that's why Nirvikalpa Samadhi is important. But that's not an understanding that you get from deep sleep. Otherwise, everyone would have that, and they don't.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
So, Jenny, are you Nirvikalpa Samadhi is not a state, and yet when someone goes there,
it is a state in a sense, but it's not a state of the. It's like a state of no mind, as it were. So it's something that comes and goes. A state is something that comes and goes. So we couldn't possibly be in Nirvikalpa Samadhi all the time because, we need to function in the world. We need to eat and drink and do things. So we need to engage with objects. So mind is required. If mind wasn't operating, then we wouldn't last too long.
Right.
So it's not sustainable, in other words. However, that experience is important for understanding, because enlightenment is only about understanding. It's not about the experience. That's what people tend to misunderstand so often. They think that enlightenment is a happy state. Nothing to do with a happy state. Enlightenment is only about understanding. That's all. But Nirvikalpa Samadhi is an important tool for understanding. It's not the only one, because as I mentioned, the gap between thoughts, if you're able to really appreciate that, then that's a more natural way of understanding that consciousness can exist without mind. Consciousness is not dependent on mind.
Yeah. And this is why Nirvikalpa Samadhi cannot be described.
it can't be described because it's not a phenomenon. We can very easily describe any kind of phenomenon to a greater or lesser degree of accuracy, but we can't describe anything noumenal. We can try and point at it, and that's really, we can give analogies and metaphors, but that's the best we can do.
Wow, your description was really spot on for clarity and able to really understand it. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny.
Awesome. All right.
So,
Amy said, Rick said first, our nature consciousness is permanent. A state is not. It comes and goes. Deep sleep is a state. It's not permanent. And then Amy said, with regard to experiences beyond deep sleep, I suppose very few have been there. So to me, speaking about beyond deep sleep is a bit of a word salad. Amy, let's have a word salad, should we? That's funny. And then Lynn said, but still important to ponder the subtleties. It becomes less of a word salad after listening to Jenny explain. You hear here, yeah, that was beautifully explained, Jenny. I loved it, and I actually it came in and said something. So thanks for that. Yeah, we are beyond deep sleep. It's our nature, our truest identity. The thing is that we are, yeah, what Rick just said, we're all, this experience is awareness, so presence, it's everything. Just be that. Just be this everything. That gap that Jenny was just speaking about is right here. Where are we, William?
we are
260. How can I be one with consciousness? Atmananda said they cannot be separated even for a moment, even in idea. Both stand as the ultimate perceiver or subject and can never be objectified, not even in idea. So this question is almost absurd. How can I be one with consciousness? It is. It's absurd. But let's see what he says. The doer or enjoyer is consciousness, appearing limited by buddhi or generic mind. In the presence of consciousness, the mind, senses, and body, which are really dead matter, function as though they are not dead matter, just like iron. Oh, I love this. Just like iron filings getting enlivened in the proximity of a magnet. When the mind is proved to be consciousness itself, samskaras die out and the mind no longer continues as mind. That's the awakened, that's the jnana or the awakened presence. And it's everyone. I mean, it's all of, it's everyone has that access. Anything else to say on that, William?
no. Itself, except the samskaras die out. And that's just habits, right? Habits of mind, habits of seeing things, programming, basically.
It's an identification. It's
Yeah.
it's identifying as the body mind, as the person. Jenny, do you have anything else to say on this?
Since we were children, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this that's the last one.
Oh, it is.
Yep. That was cool. I'm going to do a commercial real quick for you guys. We're having a retreat this weekend, and if you want to come, here's what it looks like. Awakening to Your True Self, a 3-day virtual retreat starting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And these are the characters, the cast, the teachers. And you're welcome to join us. There's if you can put this, Lindsay, if you're here, can you put this in the chat, please? Or I'll do it if you're not. But if you go to this page, you'll see what the schedule is, day 1, day 2, day 3. It's like a mini retreat. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a cost or not. If you don't have any money, just contact, go to the end of the page and contact, click on Join Us and contact, oh, I thought it said it. Contact us. Click on Contact Us if you don't have any money, and you'll be taken to info@teachersofgod.org, and they'll work out something so that you don't have to miss the event. So if you're interested in seeing some of the teachers here, and this will be really good because you'll get to really hear the expression of some of the co-hosts here and people who have either had an awakening experience through just the non-dual, and they're going to point from there, or from A Course in Miracles. Most everyone needed to move to the non-dual to have an awakening, even if they came from the Course. But the Course has a beautiful flavor when you go back to it with a right-mindedness, with an understanding of what awakening is, and that it's accessible and available to everyone. So that's all for the commercial. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, William, for being an awesome co-host, and you're brilliant.
Oh, it's a privilege.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jenny, and everyone that participated on the board, and your awesome questions and presence. And we'll see you next Wednesday, unless we see you this weekend. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.